We spend so much of our lives in this digital world, but have you ever stopped to think about who actually writes the laws for it? It's not one person, and it's definitely not just one country. Today, we're going to untangle this incredibly complex web of global cybersecurity and try to figure out who's really calling the shots.
This is really the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Is there some secret global committee deciding everything, or is it more of a free-for-all between powerful countries and giant tech companies? Well, the answer is kind of all of the above. It's messy, it's fascinating, and we're going to break it all down, starting with the absolute fundamentals of digital protection.
All right, so before we can even begin to talk about a global rulebook, we have to agree on what game we're all playing. What are we actually trying to protect here? And what are the core, non-negotiable principles that everyone in cybersecurity lives and breathes by? At its heart, cybersecurity is really just about defense. Seriously, think of it like the digital version of the lock on your front door, or the security guard for your most important information. It's this whole massive field dedicated to stopping all the nasty stuff we hear about. Hacking, malware, phishing attacks, all to keep our digital lives from falling apart. People in the security world boil this huge, complicated field down to three core ideas. They call it the CIA triad. First up is confidentiality. That's just keeping secrets secret, like a sealed letter. Then there's integrity, which means making sure that the information you're looking at is the real deal and hasn't been messed with. And finally, availability, which is just making sure you can get to your information when you actually need it. Literally, every security system, from your email account to your bank's website, is trying to perfectly balance these three things.
Okay, so with those core ideas in mind, let's zoom way out. The internet, by its very nature, doesn't have borders, so how in the world do you write a rulebook that everyone can agree on? This is where you get this amazing collision of international diplomacy and hardcore technical standards.
And you can see there are a bunch of different ways people are trying to create some order. You've got actual legal treaties, like the Budapest Convention, which tries to get everyone on the same page about what even counts as a cybercrime. Then you have huge data privacy laws like the EU's GDPR. Yep, that's the reason you see those accept cookies pop-ups on every single website. And then there are these high-level diplomatic talks at the UN and super technical standards from groups like ISO. It's this wild mix of hard law, soft diplomacy, and industry best practices. But, and this is a huge but, all of these international efforts run smack into one major problem: national interest. Just like countries protect their physical borders, they are now racing to build digital borders, and they're enforcing their own laws that can have a massive ripple effect across the entire global internet. And this is where the real tension comes in. When a country's own interests, its definition of security, its desire for control, clash with that ideal of a single, open, global internet, who wins? This conflict is literally shaping the future of the web as we speak. Just look at these two powerful examples. In the US, the model often leans towards voluntary partnerships, encouraging private companies and the government to share information about threats. But in contrast, China's approach really emphasizes state control. It mandates that critical data has to be stored inside the country and gives the government direct oversight. These aren't just slightly different laws, they're fundamentally different philosophies about how the internet should work, and they create this incredibly complex patchwork of rules for any company that operates globally.
But here's the twist. It's not all just conflict and competition. Because cyber threats couldn't care less about borders, countries are actually forced to work together. You see it happening with law enforcement groups like Interpol, which hunts down cybercriminals across the globe. You see it at big economic forums like the G20 and APEC, where digital security is now a fundamental part of talking about trade. It's this messy but absolutely vital layer of cooperation happening right on top of all the national competition.
So this really brings us to the absolute core of the whole issue. All of these standards and national laws and cooperative groups, they're all part of this one giant ongoing quest for a single thing: trust. Can we actually build a digital world that we can all genuinely rely on?
So you might be thinking, if everyone wants a secure internet, why not just create one big universal treaty and be done with it? Well, it turns out that's incredibly difficult. For starters, nations can't even agree on basic priorities. What one country calls state security, another might call censorship. Their legal systems totally clash. And the very idea of cyber sovereignty, a country's right to control its own digital space, is one of the most hotly debated topics out there. At the end of the day, every single law, every standard, and every treaty
is part of this fragile, ongoing effort to build trust. Trust that our data is safe, trust that the online services we depend on every day will be there tomorrow. That's the whole ballgame, because without that security, our digital society just stops working. And that leaves us with this massive question for the future. Can we really build lasting digital trust on this messy patchwork of competing laws and fragile agreements? Or is a single universal rulebook for our shared digital world simply inevitable? That's the challenge that lies ahead.